everybody. Welcome to Life Mastery TV, and this is episode number 177. I don't know if you can believe that. 177. I've been doing this now for quite a few years. I'm really excited about it. And actually, I'm sorry, it's 176. That's it. I can't count. I'm so enthusiastic about bringing these shows to you. I add one when I shouldn't. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about work-life balance in a virtual world. I think that's a pretty important topic, especially given that it's been well over a year now since the announcement of the global pandemic that has basically turned everything around for most people on the planet. This transformation that has taken place is something that most people would never have expected to happen. And yet, guess what? Here we are. So even with restrictions being eased and social distancing and other measures starting to diminish, the situation is created in which many people in many countries around the world find themselves working from home almost all the time. And so this notion of a work-life balance has taken on a whole new meaning, a completely different idea, because if you're working from home and you're playing at home, how do you find that balance? And so this situation has created a lot of stress, I think, which affects us all in one way or another. And so for this episode, I've invited a good friend of mine to join me today to this show to share some of his brilliance and wisdom. My guest is a speaker, author, business coach, and e-learning expert who is committed to helping authors, teachers, entrepreneurs, and change agents light up the world with their message. He's the creator of Launch Academy, a live online training program that teaches participants how to successfully launch transformative and lucrative online courses and grow their global learning economy. Please join me in welcoming my good friend, Chris Kyle, to our show today. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, David. Good to be here with you once again. I think this is our third or fourth time, so I'm happy to be here with you and your community.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think we've been together on this platform about 5 times now, although it's only been twice since I restarted it in 2018, or maybe this is the third one. I don't know. But yeah, it's always great to have you here, Chris. I love talking to you. You and I mean, I think we are soulmates in a very, very deep sense of the word. And, there's a way in which we communicate that many people might not completely understand. And I'm really grateful that I was able to call upon you and have you come into this show. And I know that, you've been going through a pretty challenging time over the last few years and particularly in the last couple of years. How have you been bringing your own self into this so that you can balance between work and life?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think, for me, it's helpful for me to start here, and maybe for the audience too, is sort of what's the core challenge about this idea of work-life balance in a virtual world, and over the last couple of years, there's been some personal challenges in my life, health issues with family and all that. But as I look at kind of shaping up the problem, what I noticed over the last year, and things that have stressed my family and myself in addition to the pandemic, is how much I'm online, how much I'm plugged in and on Zoom and on email and on my phone and all that. And we all know that there's this kind of increasing addiction to the technology and to our phones and all that. And that's well documented. But for me, the challenge, and many might relate to this, and the problem for me, and a lot of my students and others share this too, is that we're like plugged into the matrix. Like it's like feeling overstimulated and over plugged into all of the technology that in many cases is critical to our business or to our life. Like I've been on Zoom some days, 6, 7, 8 hours on Zoom every day for, big part of this, the pandemic time. And so, and that in some ways, David, that's actually not changing. That's now embedded from what you said, is people now working from home more still, even post-pandemic. And so the big challenge I see is, what cost is that having on me, on my beingness, on my energy, on my sense of peace and groundedness? And it's I feel it having a cost on me. And so then as I get into more challenges, like you said, over the last year, some health issues with my wife and actually my father and stepmother, have a lot of challenges, I've noticed that in some ways I haven't been as, I don't know, present, maybe also a little bit more edgy, disconnected. That there's a quality that my system is kind of wired in this technology way to be a little bit more anxious, to be a little bit more kind of high strung. So as some of these natural life challenges have come, this idea of being, again, more in a virtual world, and we'll talk to some other pieces of this, of how to work with it and be with it later, but it's really having a cost on my groundedness, my peacefulness, my presence, my, I call it, for me, I become more brittle, David.
Right.
So what's been happening with all this technology, and even in my work, I'm online a ton, and that's just part of my work. Other people go to an office and sit at a desk and talk with people. That's great. But I have to really be vigilant of this balance, of this work-life balance in a digital world or in a virtual world, more so than ever. We've been talking about work-life balance for 50 years, right?
Right.
But it's different. It's a really different challenge and struggle right now in our digital world, in our virtual world. So I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with this brittleness and this tension, and like up here, like living more vibrating here versus really dropping down in my body. Yeah.
You brought up some really, really good points here. I mean, do you remember, it wasn't that long ago, really, certainly within the last 20 years, that it used to be, you wanted to get online, you actually had to go turn on the computer.
Right.
Nowadays, it seems like the computer is always on, and if you want to separate from that, you have to turn it off. It's a huge shift in thinking, and you're right. I mean, I think about this. My wireless connector, my router and everything else is always on at home. Mm-hmm. But I do turn off my computers so that they're not actually communicating, and that theoretically will reduce the amount of electromagnetic radiation and stuff in my home. But I have noticed what you're talking about, this sense of brittleness. I really, that's not the word I would have chosen, but I like that word because I think it does describe how I've been feeling. Mm-hmm. It's like, man, it's like I'm edgy, I'm jumpy sometimes, and it's really not a pleasant feeling. Yeah. And technology is great. It helps us to stay connected in a physical way, or at least an electronic way. And that's, from that sense, it's kind of nice. But what I agree with you. What is the cost? What is the real cost here? Now, I didn't come armed with facts and figures about the impact of electromagnetic radiation or anything. And that's not really where I want to go. I know that there's plenty of information out there. Right. And let's just say that too much electromagnetic radiation is not good for you. Let's just say it that way.
Yeah, EMF. But also not just beyond that. I mean, we can say that, but just literally being on a screen, the blue light, not just the EMFs, the kind of lag in Zoom. There's a very, very quick, very like minute lag in Zoom that creates challenges. And there's actually Zoom fatigue is kind of being proven by research and all that. So there's lots of things even beyond just EMF that's in our digital world that has us churning and has our brain working at different frequencies and levels. And all of that's at play, right? Beyond even just the EMF frequencies. And it's all there. Yeah. Yeah. And just even the addiction, even the mental addiction to the technology, David,
correct.
Just the mental addiction.
So many variables, it's hard to keep track of all of them.
Right. That's right.
And so I guess what I would like to talk about, and where I would like to focus our attention here is, what can we do as energetic beings, as spiritual beings who are trying to navigate through this physical world and this strange stay-at-home electronic communication kind of thing that we've created for ourselves? How do we find a way to stay healthy and happy and connected to nature?
Yeah, I mean, and so you want to kind of go right into sort of how we, sort of my thoughts and ideas on how we do that, like how we balance. Let's dive in
and see where we go.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've shaped the problem. I mean, I just want to say one more thing about it and then go right into the thing, is that we can talk about work-life balance in a sense of time, right? So that's usually how it's been dealt with for years, is work-life balance is about finding enough time for family and the things you love and the activities that you love and all that while balancing it usually with intense work, right? So most of it has come down to time management, right?
Right.
So it's like, I make time for this, I make time for that. And then I also, I choose priority, right? So I'm not just going into workaholic mode and work is number one priority over everything. People are starting to say family is more priority. My spiritual practice is priority. The difference now, David, is that when we talk about work-life balance in a digital world, is we must consider also our attachment to the digital devices that we're using.
Yeah.
And then so that's a new thing that's not just about time, it's also about unhooking. So there's time and there's unhooking. And so for me, as we look at the sort of highest level, and you've kind of mentioned this already, is that like work-life balance in a digital world, in a virtual world, is as much about, and we'll start at a high level here, about unplugging as it is also about setting time priorities for other things. So
right. And of course, as soon as you say unhooking or unplugging, I immediately have the image of Neo separating from the Matrix.
Exactly. That's actually a great metaphor. That is a great metaphor and a storyline to pull in here, is that we are literally, that's the power of that movie, is we are now truly plugged in deeply and getting more and more plugged in, like we have the thing in our neck, right?
Right, exactly.
And that we do have to just consciously and with energy choose to unplug, just like Neo went to Morpheus. Yes, give me the pill. Give me the red
that's
pill.
Right. Yeah.
And so it is that choice. It's a choice, and the red pill is going to help me unplug. So what is, the red pill really is that awareness that says that I need to be in better balance around my technology, not just work-life balance, but how I am in relationship with my technology that opens up space and time and a different kind of energy and field to feel more peaceful, relaxed, open, present, all that stuff. And then that applies then, okay, now in my life balance, work-life balance, I'm more present for my family. I'm hanging out with my wife and my phone is off, or I didn't bring it with me on our dinner date, right? Like how often does somebody like sit at dinner, David, and it's right in front of them face up at dinner and it's dinging off. And I hate that. I usually ask friends in the past, and now the pandemic, I can come back to these dinners and meals. And I ask people to like put it in their pocket or take it off the table, because it's another reminder of being plugged in. So first step, I believe, in our digital world now is to find those times and places that are conscious choices to unplug. And
absolutely. This is a great starting point. And by the way, I think what I wanted to say is you talked about that brittleness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way I'm interpreting that is the more we have these electronic devices around us, the more difficult it is, I think, to be fully present, to be here now.
Yeah.
They kind of interrupt our natural energetic flow in some way that I can't possibly comprehend or understand. Well, I can understand it, but I can't necessarily explain it. And so I think that what you're talking about is, the idea of just taking the phone and turn it off. Turn it off. Leave it at home when you go out to a meal or something. And unfortunately, you're going to go to a restaurant. There's going to be all kinds of other people with those things on. So you're still going to have the impact of the environmental devices that are all around. But at least you can reduce your own contribution to that, and therefore hopefully elevate your level of energy.
Yeah. And so one of the things I did a video blog on this too, about like unplugging from our devices to bring in, again, more creativity, more thinking time, more me time, more presence. And one of the things that I think is important is to say, we know it's got to be a conscious choice. We're not going to get rid of all these devices. It's not going to go away. It's more impregnated into our culture and into our day-to-day life. But we'll, just like so many things around, the good analogies here, David, are diet and exercise. So much humans continue to work that edge of, I want to stay healthy in my body, so I want to eat right, I want to exercise. And now my belief is we must put in our devices into that great that duad, the duology there, into a triad, which is how I'm eating, my health, my exercise, and my device time. And so one of the things that I recommend for people is actually, even if you bring it with you, is just airplane mode. For example, David, just airplane mode. So it's kind of an inert device in your pocket. So you don't actually have to leave it at home. And any time that you're choosing to be with people, with a friend or with your family or whatever, is just turn it off, put it into airplane mode or leave it upstairs while you're downstairs, so that there is this kind of conscious choice that I'm with people. Let me unplug from that so that there is at least some settling and not something, oh, a text just came in. Oh, was that a phone call? Did I see something flash in my phone? All of that is that we all know that's all part of the dopamine response in the brain. All of that, any little flick, any possibility a text might come in, any ding is actually working at that level in our brain, in the old brain. So we got to cut that. It's just like if you're eating too much ice cream and tons of sugar, part of the diet choice is just stop, try to cut out as much of that as you can. Same thing with our devices. So this is my belief, is that devices aren't going away, but how do we manage them in our life? This is part of that work-life balance as now a new thing into these things. Like we talk about family time, exercise, diet, and now device time.
Right.
And it's got to be there. Yeah.
So it's interesting that you mentioned sugar. Because sugar is kind of addictive. So sugar and salt, people love that sort of stuff. And it seems to me that the little flashes and dings and stuff that you're talking about on your electronic devices, those are electronic sugar. That's what they are.
Yeah.
They're digital sugar that just keep you active and activated so that you're constantly paying attention to your device and not focusing on what is important right now.
Yeah, they're dopamine hits. I mean, they actually equate it more to like cocaine, if you know that. But you probably all know the studies too, that they actually show that sugar is more addictive than even cocaine long term.
Really?
But yes, the cocaine or sugar response in our body is very similar when we get the ding or somebody's texting, whatever, that has a very similar response. And so that's tough. That means we're fighting to a certain degree our biology. We're fighting our brain chemistry. So how do we do that? We've got to be more conscious about it and set intention to say, like the whole point of this show is, how do you find work-life balance or just balance in your life in general in a virtual world? Well, a big part of that is making conscious choices that no, I will feel better and healthier if I do this. Most people don't think that way, David, when I ask them. They don't. They think the device is critical. It's critical to my life and my business. And they don't equate it to sugar. They don't equate it to bad food. They don't equate it to no exercise. So I want more people, as I talk to, and for myself as well, is to be thinking of it as this addictive pull, and how do I work with it? And how do I work with that? Right. And so I got to tell you, over the last couple of years, I mean, this is my, kind of my deeper share, is that it's gotten worse for me, David. I've gotten more pulled in because we've had less social time, less connection with people, not only being on my laptop and my computer, but going to my phone just to look at sports scores or to look at the news or to check my accounts again. Like I've noticed that even with stupid stuff, I'm going to it as some kind of binky. And this is what Charmaine calls it. She calls my phone, "How's your binky?" It's the greatest thing. And it just cuts right through. We laugh. And it literally is an adult binky. So hopefully people get that, because I'm sucking on. And it is. We just go to it like a baby keeps that binky in there. We go to our phone and we look at it, even when we don't need to, David, even when we don't even need to check anything out. And so how can we break that?
So you're not alone. I know that is part of my experience too. And I'm sure that people watching this show right now have similar experiences in their own lives. It's not, I get it. And I don't want to judge anybody for that. The technology was given to us and we embraced it. We collectively embraced it. And we can see all the benefits it creates. And probably most of us didn't think too much about the downside of what we were getting into when we embraced this.
Yeah.
I've been involved in computers for like 40 years. I've been involved one way or another with computers for a long time. And I've always thought of them as amazing devices. Mm-hmm. Now, nearly 40 years later, I'm starting to see, just how bad these things can be. And they're not intentionally bad, but we have allowed them to evolve into something that takes away more than they give us.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, that what I think we're trying to solve here without actually eliminating the technology. That's what we're looking at. And I think you've hit the nail right on the head. It's really all about choice. When you think about an addiction is really nothing more than a belief that I'm going to get some form of, I'm addicted to the high I get out of participating in something, whether it's a drug, whether it's sex, whether it's gambling, or as you say, whether it's playing with a binky.
Exactly.
And I have mine right here too.
Yeah.
Either way, we're getting something out of it, and we assume we make the association of happiness, pleasure, joy with this device.
Yep.
And that's where the addiction comes from.
Yeah. And it's just like it's just like somebody in a 12-step program in AA or whatever. All of that is just working through choices, right? I can choose every day. And I don't want to put it so heavily into the, like, oh my God, it's like you're an alcoholic, but in a way it is, David. I mean, it's just a lighter version with less impact potentially on people around you than being a drug addict or an alcoholic. But it's very similar in the sense that every day I can make a choice about how much I want to engage it, because that is where the time suck. This is that idea of work-life balance, and this idea of being able to come into doing more of the things that we love, that feed us and that are healthy for us, that are interesting, And some people have now equated being on the phone or looking at news scores or blah, 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 that actually is in some ways become their downtime, David, or their fun time. The problem is it has an impact on the brain and an impact on our nervous system that is actually not healthy. And it's like eating too much sugar or having that drug or, cocaine or, being an alcoholic. It actually is getting to that place that we see in our teens. You've seen the stories, people have watched the news or whatever, is just the young people that are literally attached to it every second of every day, David. And that is not healthy.
No,
and yet we don't treat it like that yet. I will say that one of the folks I've been reading is Richard Louv, who's known for this idea of putting forth what he calls the nature deficit disorder. And he has a book called Vitamin N, and he wrote a book called Last Child in the Woods, which is a #1 bestseller about kids. And this is the link that you were saying earlier, is that with our devices and our technology, our video gaming, our computers, our phones particularly, is that we are spending less time outside. You don't even have to say nature, just outside under the sky and the wind and checking out the birds and just taking a walk.
But that's all right, because there's an app for that.
There is an app. You're right. You can just watch the nature go by on your app. That's so true. And so what's happening now is that's part of the antidote. One is to be consciously choosing to unplug. And there's lots of ways to do that. Turn it off, leave it in your car, take a whole day. So there is this whole movement here in the Bay Area. Do you remember, David, called Digital Detox? This Digital Detox organization. And so they have functions and parties and stuff, like all day events and hiking events, where part of it is that you check your phone in. Like they have a little table area, you check the phone in, they hold it secure, and you go through the whole experience of whatever that day is or that hike or whatever without your phone. Completely.
I think that's a great idea.
And there's more and more like that. And then so what we can do is also find those moments where we know getting outside or being with a friend without our devices are those constant choices to unplug from it. The second one I would say is to simply choose to get outside more, because we're now inside more than ever in the pandemic, on our computers, on Zoom. So it's now the part of the antidote and part of that balance. And by the way, even my device, we talk about this being the fun device, but David, it's also what connects me to my business 24/7 every day. So when we talk about work-life balance, my phone is a window into my business. So when I also choose to let go of my phone, I'm letting go of that thought pattern of, did that email come through and do I have to respond to somebody? So I let that go, and that actually creates more life space away from my business. So it's all kind of interwoven. Our tech is interwoven in that way. Yeah. So the next thing is just the big antidote that I know for me and everybody I talk to is just more time in nature without our devices. And
I think that's really important. The being in nature, even if it's just go outside your house and go for a walk. I mean, you got to get out into fresh air. You got to get the sun. You got to get all of this stuff is stuff that we need. I'm very grateful that I have my dog here, Apollo, who requires outside time.
Yeah. Right.
And therefore, I'm out with him 3 times a day. So we go for a walk, probably a half an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, and another half hour in the evening. So I'm out for 2 hours every day walking my dog.
Yeah.
And I do not take any electronic devices with me. My
That's
attention is with him and with the walk.
Yeah.
And so I love it because it really gets me detached, as you say, unplugged temporarily from the matrix. And it allows me to be more connected to nature, even if most of that nature is just trees along a sidewalk, or going through a park that maybe has some flowing water in it or something. It's not quite nature to the extent where I'm out in the mountains or climbing a long, difficult hike, or being by the ocean or something. All that would be great. I just don't have the flexibility to do that right now.
Yeah, but anything outside, I agree, David. Just anything outside where you're sniffing the air, you're feeling the weather on you, whether it's sun or clouds or rain, and you're walking by some kind of nature on your block, trees on the block, or a park.
Hours.
Park, even sitting, doesn't even have to be walking. It could sit on a bench in a park for a little bit of time and just kind of soak in the natural environment. And of course, it does help to maybe find some deeper nature on weekends or every couple of weeks where you actually take an adventure. And this is the other piece, is just get outside is one. So if anybody wants to read Richard Louv's work, it's brilliant stuff. It's New York Times #1 bestseller stuff. And he has he has a book called The Nature Principle. And he is showing you, as you were talking about, and we won't get into all this stuff about all the research around it, but research is particularly pointing toward that nature has this, just time in nature, time outdoors, has this incredible benefit on our cortisol levels, on our stress levels, and all that. Right. That is even more important now, less important when I grew up, David, because guess what? I was outside all the time with my friends. And in just the last 30 years, with the rise of computer gaming and other things, now kids are staying in constantly. They're in fact, some, lots and lots of kids, millions of kids aren't even going outside. They're moving from their house to the car, to the school, coming back and gaming. And it's same with adults too. Ours is phones and computers and being on Zoom and all that. So when we can actually just spend time in nature, it has a kind of, what we say is a kind of a medicinal effect on us from all of the tension and all of the busyness and the dopamine response of our devices, so that once we spend time in nature, we don't have to do anything other than do that. And it has a beneficial effect on our nervous system and our bodies, everything. And so that's been proven. That's not just a kind of a nice to, that's what my grandma said would be good. It's actually scientifically proven to shift us. And if we do that more often, that is a key part of work-life balance as well, is I don't just get off my computer. Here's what I've been doing over the last year, David, that I'm kind of beating myself up a little bit, is I will have a series of calls. I've been on my computer a lot, working hard. And then when I get a little break, David, okay, I'm going to step away. And you know what I do? I grab my phone and I go and I sit somewhere and I just review whatever I like to review, the news, sports scores, my investments, any number of things. And I find supposedly in my brain that is like settling me, like I'm reading, but I should pick up a book, a physical book, and do that.
I agree.
Or get outside, or take literally a 10-minute walk and just do that to kind of clear my head, get outside, come back. And that I know will have more energy restoration for me, more restorative and better. And then I'll just have to pick and choose my times with my phone to check stuff. What is that? Okay, so more in the evenings before dinner. So when I'm not outside or playing, or lunchtime could be more lunch and a walk and not my phone. So these are all choices again. And it's hard because sometimes I literally, as a default, just go to the phone and sit down, plop down. And other people in a younger generation, David, might actually plop down and just pop on a video game on their PlayStation, right? And that's the kind of unwinding time. And what's terrible about that is it's actually not unwinding anything. It's actually winding up the brain more, making more tension and stress. So that's time in nature, dude. Look, I have a lot of friends that say that their main workout is going to the gym, David. So they go from their house, they drive to the gym, they do all their physical workout in the gym, and they come back to their house. And again, that's not the same thing as stepping outdoors, being under the
Right.
sky, walking in some natural environment. And
Well, yeah, but
that's
even in the gym, how many monitors are there around the
that's
gym? How much
that's right.
loud music is there? How much connection? I'm sure they can have their phone connected right into some USB port or something right on the machine.
Yeah.
They're not disconnected at all.
I know, David, it's so good. That is such a great point, because I see people all on their little ellipticals and the treadmills, and guess what? They're watching a screen right in front of them.
Exactly.
And they're not even getting the workout. I mean, there's nothing. They're already proving that kind of low cardio does nothing for you. So people are basically going there to watch TV and feel better. Now, I don't want to diss on people that go to the gym and all that. It's important if you want to lift weights and do all that. But my point is that actually is not as important. Sure, do that 3 times a week or whatever, get your weight workout. But any cardiovascular thing that you choose to do, get outside, freaking get outside, get off the treadmill, get off the elliptical, get off the bike. Get off the stationary bike and just get outside. I mean, it makes such a big difference on that hike or a run. A very, very simple jog run outside is way better than the way the elliptical moves you or the way the treadmill moves you. It's like, so anyway, I'm dissing on all that. I used to do a lot of that, and I used to go to the gym and do my weight workout and do all that.
But I think there's a few things here that we can just make some comparisons.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was a kid, we had a TV. It was a black and white TV, and it had 3 channels, I think, if we were lucky.
Right.
And you had to get up and turn this knob to change the channels. And there was only a certain amount of time during the day when the broadcast was on.
Mm-hmm.
And you wanted to watch a show, you had to wait until that show came on during the week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things have changed so much. Now everything is on demand. We have been conditioned to expect instant gratification.
Yes. Yep.
For pretty much everything. And all of it is being delivered digitally. I saw a guy do a comic performance the other day talking about delivery from, Prime delivery from Amazon.
Yes.
And he was saying, what? I just ordered it. Why isn't it here? I mean, this was a comedy routine. And I was thinking, that's exactly what people are thinking.
Exactly. I want to
they got 1 day delivery. Now we've got 2-hour delivery. Pretty soon it's going to be, they're going to hand it to you before you even press the order button.
I totally get it. I was just looking at what Sarah said too. Is it less dangerous people being distracted by them whilst driving are a danger to others and themselves? So, I mean, there's this whole thing too about the distraction. I mean, Sarah's pointing out to this important thing that we haven't brought up, is that the way our world works now and the way our technology is so embedded, as you just said, David, is that there is so much, and then everything on demand. There are so many distractions. There are so many ways to engage entertainment, engage something, news, entertainment, whatever. Our media cycle is 24/7 and intense. And I actually wrote about this when I was doing my purpose work, David. I called it the 3 purpose blocks, and one of them was the distraction vortex. This idea that I literally, consciously and unconsciously, have so many thousands of ways to distract myself from what might be really important, is important time with family, or doing more purpose-oriented work, or writing that book that I've always wanted to write, like you've been talking about, of continuing to write. So we need to, the challenge is it's not about like either or dumping all technology or hope we go back to the 50s or something like that. It's here, but it does mean more powerful choices, and very much choices like people are having to make around, like we said, substance abuse and or diet or food. We've got to put our technology in that arena, not beat ourselves up, but then how do we manage it? How do we work with it so that it has a healthy balance in our life? And I think the kind of the other piece that I've been looking at is that, this idea of, unplug in general, being outside. The other thing that I'm finding that's really important as I think about just work-life balance in general and the technology realm is to really allow myself to be pulled forward by what are the things that feed me or nurture me. Right, Dave? Remember, we've talked even this, and that could be creative outlets like I want to keep writing. It could be more time in spiritual practice, more time in meditation that really feeds me. It could be painting, drawing. It could be doing like challenging myself to say, hey, I want to run my first marathon, or I really like those kinds of things that draw us, that are more purposeful and more, how would you say, things that might feed our soul longer term, are also the counterpoint to say that choice is, if I'm training for this race, so I'm training for a century race, a 100-mile bicycle race that's going to be in the fall. So guess what, David, is I feel called to do that. Like, hey, I'm excited about that. I now get a choice. Could I just sit here on my phone for an hour, just kind of reviewing stuff? Or do I put that down immediately and get on my bike and get outside and ride? So this is another part of work-life balance. You and I have talked about this, is that sense of purposeful work, or the things that pull me or draw me that I'm passionate about. Those passions actually lead you back to actually a sense of purpose and meaning. And then how do I want to make?
We are not choosing everything else that isn't X. We are making a conscious a movement towards this thing called X, whatever it might be, whether it's our telephones, whether it's something else, it doesn't matter. The point is, we are making that choice. And what we need to do as conscious individuals, I think, is to look at the choice. Look at all of our choices, not necessarily, the minuscule choices like, oh, I'm choosing to take a breath, or I'm choosing to have my dinner, or not those mundane choices. I'm talking about the ones that have a real impact in your life. And then ask yourself the question, is that the impact that I truly want to be creating in my life? Because if it is, then maybe that's the choice that you should continue following. But if it's not the kind of impact you want to create, now you got to look and say, all right, how do I shift to create the impact that I do want to create? And so you see choice now and creation start to come into play together, because every choice creates an impact. Every choice. Yes. It may be a very small impact, but it could be a far-reaching, long-term impact that you maybe haven't anticipated. And this is important. We have to make choice, and we have to take full responsibility for all aspects of that choice, including the unintended consequences that we really hadn't anticipated.
Yeah. And I like the choice. And then there's one thing for me that goes along with choice, and that is, without it being too businesslike or sterile, is that I really do look at my life and say, what are my priorities? What are most important?
Bingo, that's where I was going next.
That helps with those choices. And so I begin that, some of that lines up with my purpose. If I have a sense of what my gifts are and how I want to bring my gifts forward and my purpose, but rather, regardless of purpose orientation, I'm still setting priorities. What's most important in my life? And for so many people, as I ask this time and time again, is, as you look at your entire life, what do you feel is most important in your life, like as a human being in your life? And I rarely hear people say, David, that making money and building my business is the most important thing. Now, many people are living that way, but when they're asked to step back and look at what are really the priorities, they talk about family, relationships, feeling healthy. Like, I want my, I've heard this so many times, David. It's like, it's an oldest cliche in the book, is that if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And in a way, it's true. If I'm not keeping my body healthy, then everything else, if I'm in pain and I'm hurting and then life is really sucky. So it's like these things that I hear continually of these priorities. The problem is we don't live into those priorities. We say those priorities, and then we go back to what I call the default world. And the default world is what our culture tells us is make the money, move up the corporate ladder. Success is defined by power and money, or position, you could say in some cases. And so what happens is then we go into that default, even though we say priority is over here. So a big part of, again, work-life balance as we unhook from our devices is to begin to look at what are our choices, and then where are our priorities, and can we actually truly take a stand and live into those priorities, even if they have a cost or an impact on other areas of our life. Absolutely. Maybe we make a little less money, or we make a different choice in our work situation because it feels more in balance with our life, rather than pushing to somehow get up some ladder that very, very, very few people say, I made it here, I have my $10 million in the bank, and I'm super, super happy. There was usually some big cost to make that happen. Divorce, family suffers, not around, whatever. And then you say, oh my God, I made the 10 million. Oh, but my family's gone. I don't have a partner, my kid,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that's everybody. I certainly know plenty of people here, particularly in the Bay Area, who make lots of money and are committed to their balance in their life and all that. So it's not about not making money, but so often we use that as the thing that's the most successful thing I can do in my life, is build that nest egg, that money.
You know, you hit on some interesting points, and you were reminding me of a story I heard. You know, the story of the guy on his deathbed. What are his final words? Oh man, I sure wish I had spent more time at the office.
The Office.
No, those are. I don't think anyone has ever recorded those as last words of a person who's dying. It's almost
Right, I
always
agree.
like you say, oh, I so regret not spending more time with my kids, or I wish I had done this or this or this or whatever. It's all about connection and spiritual growth.
This is the perfect place for me to bring in a little bit of data and information. So some people may have seen this TED Talk, but there's been a Harvard Adult Development Survey. Have you heard about this? It's the longest continuous study of adult behavior and adult health in history. It's now coming up to 80 years old. Literally some of the first subjects were like JFK. Seriously, John F. Kennedy coming out of Harvard. So they looked at men, I think mostly men early on, but they expanded it from Harvard, and then men that were in Boston area, but from lower income status. They had all these people in the study. They've added people over the years, but they have been tracking these people in the study for 80 plus years. Many of them have died, but they've been tracking all of that data. And the executive director did an amazing TED Talk about what did they learn from all of that, David? 80 years of studying. Literally, they had people come in and take blood tests and heart tests and stress tests and interviewed them. Like literally every 3 years or 5 years, the participants were willing and came back to do this.
How many participants did they have?
They had something like 600, something like that. I think it was
a non-trivial survey then.
Yeah, it was like 300, there was a mix, and early on it was mostly men, but then quickly they added some women to the study. So that was kind of the problem, is you got to have a little mix, at least the genders. But they basically added a few over the years, but some of the subjects they have tracked since their 20s. So they took participants literally right out of during Harvard or coming out of Harvard, and then others that were in their 20s. So now 80 years later, many have died, but some are still alive. Some were a little bit younger. And so what they've learned, and it was so simple, but what was most impactful on overall health, happiness, and sense of meaning. So health, happiness, and meaning, not just body health, but all of that came down to the depth and quality of your relationships. Period.
Man, you know, it really surprises me. I mean, that is just common sense. And yet we had to have a study to prove it.
I know, but it's true. It's think about it, is we all know that kind of intuitively, but we don't live that way in our modern culture anymore. It's an epidemic of loneliness, as you know, an epidemic of isolation, particularly for young boys and boys, more so than women. And that's just the way we're indoctrinated in our culture. And the prevalence of suicide is increasing and all that. So what is so powerful about this is to say that if I'm making priority, then I'm thinking about the depth and quality. It's not just having lots of friends, David. It was really clear. The study was about the depth and the quality of the relationships. And what he pointed out to was a commitment of those people to keeping those relationships alive and working through challenging times, instead of just immediately divorcing, going through the challenges with their partner and then figuring it out. So he talked a lot about the people that they found were healthier, happier, and all that, had really worked at relationships, David, intuitively. It's not like they took a workshop or anything. They just said, this is the juice of life, is the family around me and my friends, and we cut it up and we go and play racquetball and we do, it's like all of that kind of energy is what keeps us healthy. We're these social beings that get as much from being in deep connection as we do from any kind of other health, going out on a bike ride or eating right. It's literally our social connections and the depth of them makes the difference in heart rate and cancer rates. They literally showed it across the board of all of those that had those higher levels and depth of relationship had all the factors lined up for living longer, reporting more happiness and all that. So what I say is now when I look at priority, my two priorities, and the hardest one for me is this: I'm in a spiritual community, and our teacher is really asking us to say, well, is it possible to put your awakening journey, your spiritual path, at the center of your mandala, at the center of your life, that is the top priority, and that things around that are still important to be a householder and do your work, but that what's at the center of your mandala is your spiritual life, and with that is your spiritual community and your friends.
Of course.
And so I've been challenged by that to say, a lot of times that feels at the periphery, and I really ask myself, what is at the center of my life? And in many ways, I will look at, and if I'm honest with myself, I would say my work and my success in work, I put at the center of my life. And I don't want it there. I want to be successful enough. I want to make the money, but I don't want to have that as like, that becomes priority. So then I do less of this, or I say, no, I can't do that. And all of a sudden work is what's most dominant. And so now it's a lot about like this work-life balance is, okay, how do I put work in a priority that is, supportive of the other priorities, mostly around relationships, mostly around the quality of those relationships, but also about the quality of my own beingness, David. So that means, getting outside, getting in nature, doing the things that feed my soul, that'll help me be more in my body and more present and more connected.
So there's two, this is great. I love this, man. We're just charging along. I love it. So the first point I want two points here. First point is about relationship. I find it interesting that the quality and depth of relationship is known to be like the primary supporter of healthy, happy, joy-filled lives. And yet, isn't it ironic that these devices that we've created to provide us a sense of continual connection have done anything but improve relationships?
Yes. Yep.
So that's the first point. The second point I wanted to make is you've been talking about finding this balance, and I'm just having this image come back to my mind of the, what did we call it? The circle of life or something like that in the MKP world, where we did this. It's a circle with 8 quadrants, or I guess they're 8 octants, that one for relationship, one for money, one for friends, one for work, environment. So there's 8 different sections in there. And I remember doing this test and using it as a tool and say, okay, if you say the center point is at 0 for each of those octants and the outside is at 10, how do you rate yourself in each octant? And then what you end up with doing is you connect all the dots and you discover that you've got a wheel that is very unbalanced. Because some of those areas are going to be like a 10 for you, and some areas are going to be closer to a 0. And so the idea is not necessarily to stop doing the things that give you a 10, but rather to figure out how to bring the other ones so they're also a 10. And then once you find that balance, the next question you ask is, okay, now let's shift all the numbers in by half or something. And now how do we improve on what we've got? So and it's a great tool, and I wish I had thought to bring it here today, but I didn't. Anyway, I just thought I would add that because it's
and it is such a great tool to be what that tool allows you, or that approach allows somebody, is to think consciously about areas of their life and where they may be out of balance. The one trap that I find in some of them, not all of them, and maybe I'm not sure what tool you use, but for me, sometimes there's just too many, David. It's like somebody's really enamored with their model. So they have 12 quadrants, right? Exactly. And then there's all these sub quadrants. So again, people that are enamored with their own brilliance and stuff, they create this big model that I don't think is actually very helpful, because it's like, oh shit, I'm 30% less on that one of 12. And then I just get wrapped up into my own head. Exactly. But I do think there's the basics, whatever you choose to make those basics, that would be relationships, work, passions and activities that I love, and then health, body, and then, creativity, or, you might have your own 6 quadrants. And so I think somebody creating their own is really powerful, is to say, what are the kind of, what's my quadrants that I think are most healthy for me and being in balance with these, and then say, okay, I am going to be attuned to these 5 different areas or these 6 different areas. And where am I at a 1 in one area? Where am I at a 10 in another? And then I can begin to make choices and adjust around that.
Exactly.
I'm trying to simplify it down to, kind of, what are the key areas that I put at the center of my life, and then let the rest of my life kind of move and flow based on my choices of where in any given month or moment I feel sort of out of balance. And so for me, it's kind of spiritual work and relationships, and the relationships is like the bigger circle around it. So at the center of my life is my willingness to be an awake being, which is going to help everything. It's going to help in my relationships. It's going to help with my own, so if I can be more and more aware and awake, and I choose that as sort of the center of the work I'm doing, so I don't skimp on that, then that's going to impact the next ring for me as relationships. And then in a way, the next ring after that is, I would call purpose, creativity, and work all together. Like I want to do as much as I can to merge those. I don't separate work from all those other things. I want that sense of purpose, meaning, and work to be together. And so sometimes I'm doing shitty work that I don't like, but if it's in service to that, I'm giving my gift in a way that's impacting other people's lives, it's like, okay, great. And that I can be creative in my work. And then the rings after that, David, the rings after that are wide open. It's sort of keeping my body healthy, doing fun activities, traveling the world, whatever those are. I let those be kind of at the periphery that are going to happen. And, but they're going to come and go and be more fluid than really putting those others. Like if I have time and I'm thinking, should I do this email or should I call this friend that I feel like I totally was a jerk to that person last night? I mean, David, what am I going to do? A lot of people say, that he knows I love him, so fuck it, whatever. But right now, my friend, I have a friend, BJ, I won't say his last name. And, I came with some heat the other day and I've been thinking about it. So it's like I'm making a priority to reach back out to him.
I've experienced your heat, buddy.
I know you have. I've gotten better at it. I've got better at not bringing so much heat, but I did it last night or a couple nights ago. So now I'm thinking, just as I share this with other people, is that now I'm thinking from a priority standpoint that that's important to stay in healthy, great, deep relationship with him, rather than make all these other choices that are lower priority, right? Yeah. And so that's why I think the work, when somebody asks themselves about what's in that, either the wheel or the concentric circles, what do you want to put at the center of your life? That in itself is going to help orient work-life balance. And I can tell you, if you're really honest with yourself, and you too, David, and me, you're probably not going to put your job or your work at the center of your life.
Right.
But
so I just want to point out, Diane
says,
good for you, Chris. Reach out to your friend. And I support that. I also want to say that I love your heat, man. Because I know it's coming from your heart, and it's coming from truth. It's coming from who you believe you are, and it's coming from what you believe is the right thing to do. So that part, I just want to say, no, there was never any hard feelings from me as far as your heat is concerned. And I hope the reverse is also true for you.
Yes,
because I can be intense too.
Well, and as I grow as a human being, as I do my more of my work, guess what? Even somebody's heat or how they're reacting has less impact on me than it maybe used to. So that's what's great. Somebody brings their frustration or their heat or they're angry. I don't take it on as much as I might have used to, like somehow it was directed to me or it's about me. So yeah.
All right. Beautiful. So let me ask you this.
Yep. Is this the wrap up question or the?
No, I do want to make sure that we haven't missed opportunities for real, deep, powerful gold here. I mean, there's been so many wonderful nuggets as we have gone through, and your talk about purpose and work, bringing them together. I absolutely agree with that. I think if you have a purpose, then pretty much everything you do can be aligned with that purpose one way or another, if you choose. And you can also ask yourself, wow, is this really truly aligned with who I am and why I'm here and what I'm supposed to be doing? If it is, great. If it isn't, then you can decide whether you want to make an adjustment. So I think that's an important piece, and I don't want to just kind of let that, disappear into the ether.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to kind of come back to our theme of this kind of work-life balance, I feel like this idea of purpose or clarity of what I'm here to bring or give is the kind of glue that kind of glues this whole idea of this movement from work-life balance. I think it is actually one of the fundamental kind of, this is the gold you're talking about, is for me, it's one of the fundamental glue pieces that connect this whole idea of the work I'm doing with how I want to live my life, and that it's not separate. If I'm living from a place of feeling on purpose, feeling like I'm genuinely giving my gifts in the way that I want, then actually this idea of work-life balance doesn't become a pendulum swinging. It just becomes this ongoing giving of my gift, that I keep giving and giving it and bringing it and sharing it with people, and certainly getting money back for it, and whatever it is, whether it's in an office in a company or whether it's my own business or my own practice. That's partly the glue, is this idea of purpose and a sense of meaning in my life that will bring that all together. And still, so that work isn't seen as this other thing where I get my money, and then that's what starts to bake our noodle around, God, I'm spending too much time doing that and I need to go and do this. Well, sometimes the harder choices is, well, maybe it is time to go and do something else that becomes more aligned. And I know I work with lots of people that make those choices of shifting their whole life into a new line of work, a new way of being. You're a good example of that, David, from being in the high tech world and high tech, and then doing a lot of this on the side with it, but then deciding at some point, like, okay, I'm done with all that and I'm doing this full time, with work that you're doing now.
Yeah. So there's something I that just came to me as you were speaking, and it is, and I'm going to say this to the entire audience. The truth is, you are the gift. You are the gold. And the more you do your own work to expand your consciousness and become more aligned with the truth of who you are, the more your gift radiates and produces amazing stuff in the world. This is something that I believe is true for every single human being, and maybe all other beings as well. I don't know, but it's certainly, I believe, true for all human beings. And so it's just a question of waking ourselves up enough and maybe detaching ourselves from these devices a little bit so that we can stay connected to our essence, to the truth of who we are, and allow that to shine forth and bring the beauty and the wisdom that only we individually can bring. It could be that two of us have the same gift, but each of us, even with the same gift, will deliver it in a slightly different way that's going to resonate for different groups of people. So everybody is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I mean, that's something that I get daily. I get this dose of just feeling really inspired and moved as I work with my students, David, in Launch Academy, who are taking their message, their teaching, their expertise, their knowledge, and they're actually choosing to share it more broadly. Like, I'm going to create an online course where there's going to be people from all over the world that might be coming into my course. And so much of that is their willingness, like you said, to own their gift, to own that they have a certain way of sharing something, even if there's lots of other people, David, that do it in a similar way as they do, but they bring their own flavor to it. They bring their own passion to it. They bring their own personality to whatever they're teaching. And then to watch somebody then put that out in the world in a bigger way and have a bunch of students in their online course who are saying, wow, this totally changed my life. It impacted me. And it's so funny because it may have just been that person was the right teacher at the right time for those students, right? Even if there's other people. So it's like also getting out of our own way to say, if I have something that I'm really passionate about, I have my kind of 10,000 hours, some expertise in some arena, why not share that with other people? Why not help people navigate? Right. And instead of saying, oh my God, there's 20, 30, 50, 100 other people doing this, then that's what that's the negative self-talk and the belief structure that gets in the way that says, I can't, or I shouldn't, or there's people already doing it.
And I want to mention something else here too. I see a lot of this with certain, oh, Chris, you disappeared. I lost you. Anyway, did you drop off the call altogether? He seems to have dropped off the call. What I was going to say was, what was I going to say? I got distracted by Chris disappearing.
Okay, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, but you dropped off the camera. I don't know what happened.
David, this is the weirdest thing, and it's a bad deal, is all I did was try to swipe left to get to the other side. And literally in the swiping left, it took me out of the whole thing. So anyway,
you're using a no problem. This is a strange system. What I was going to say was I have seen there's a lot of coaches and therapists and help people out there who I believe are more interested in building a following, more interested in making the money, more interested in being famous and feeding their ego than they are in just helping people. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with making money, and there's nothing wrong with being famous. But I think if that is your priority, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Yeah. You really need to be bringing your heart and your gift to the public in whatever way you can, and let the money come to you in its own way. I really believe that is the way to do it. Mm-hmm. Not everybody's going to agree with me, and that's okay. I'm just sharing that when I see someone who is genuinely, honestly, openly, and transparently sharing his or her gift, that's when I get in resonance with a person. And that's when I start getting willing to spend money, even big bucks, with the right person.
Yep.
So it's just something that I wanted to say. I think it's important, and that's all.
Thank you, David. Yeah, beautiful. Well, David, I had blocked an hour, David. Sorry.
I know.
So
I know. We normally finish in about an hour, so I do want to wrap this up. Is there any one final message you'd like to share with people before I close out?
Yeah, I mean, just to stick with the theme of this idea of work-life balance in a virtual world, I just, my kind of final thoughts are almost a summary, is just to be aware of all the choices you make, especially now with all our digital devices, the choices you're making that take you further away from what is really feeding you, supporting you, nurturing you, and ultimately what gives you the joy of being human. Right. So that's relationships and getting outside on a beautiful walk and riding that bike. So often it's easy to just say, I'll do that tomorrow. Hey, I'm going to check the sports scores here and see what's going on. So my final thought is just be aware of your choices and start making different choices, first and foremost around your technology and unplugging. And then second, that I'm working on, is be really thinking about the priorities for you, whether it's using the wheel of life or some other thing. Is what are the priorities? What do I want to put at the center of my life in a spiritual way of thinking, the center of my mandala, and that I work from that outward rather than thinking about all the stuff I want to jam in versus, what's most important to me? What are the priorities? And I do think that'll create a juicier, richer life for you. I'm working on that myself. And how do I make those different kinds of choices that are really nurturing and feeding me? Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Well, beautiful, Chris. A juicier, richer life. I think that's what everybody would like. Beautiful finish. Thank you so much for being here, Chris. It's always great to have you here. And I want to thank all of you for watching today or for watching the replay, whatever you're doing. I'd like to remind you that the recording of this and every other episode that I do is on my website at lifemasterytv.com, life-mastery-tv.com. Feel free to pop over there, grab a free account, and watch as many recordings as you like. And also,
I have a free gift. I have a free gift for people, David, too.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Yep. Sorry. So I'll put in the chat. There's the free gift is that, you might be at some level sometime wanting to possibly create an online course for yourself. So I have this gift that's called the 10 Key Success Factors for Creating an Online Course. And so if you want, it's totally free. You can go to chriskyle.com/gift. I put that in the chat. Just copy that or go to chriskyle.com/gift. And that's my free little PDF mini ebook for you that gives kind of all my best tips on how to create a great online course.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. What I'll do is I'll make sure I add that onto the recording page as well. So there's a direct link to that. And I will let you know when that's up. So everybody, just a reminder, you're going to get a letter from the Learn It Live platform with a request for feedback. So please fill that out and help us to spread the word about Life Mastery TV. And finally, I'd like to just remind you about my Life Mastery mantra. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully embrace the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So thank you so much for joining us here today on Life Mastery TV. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye for now.